All right, the Biden economy, that continues to remain bleak. According to new data, 29% of American households have a job but still cannot afford basic necessities. And amid high inflation, experts now are warning we may not see lower rates, that ones that we expected, we were told were coming from the Federal Reserve, but instead more rate hikes. Inflation is also hurting Biden among senior citizens, with many saying that their Social Security checks can no longer cover the cost of living. And to make matters worse, the president has vowed to let most of Donald Trump's tax cuts expire next year, which would mean higher taxes for millions of Americans. Here with more, the host of Kudlow on Fox Business, Larry Kudlow. And my understanding is, doesn't he want to increase the capital gains tax, to 44%? Aren't they talking about taxing unrealized gains? All right, one day your stock is worth $100, 2 days later it's worth $50. But they want you at the end of the year, if you're up at the end of that year, they want you to pay money on something that you haven't even realized.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Sean. Actually, the capital gains could be my favorite because the Treasury Department, Janet Yellen's Treasury, put out a whole report that said they have to raise the capital gains tax to nearly 45% federal because there's too much racial inequality, and that we're going to penalize the people who have the most assets, which are white people. There's no question about that. So let's make everything worse. Instead of a rising tide lifts all boats, we're going to have a falling tide that sinks all boats. On the basis of, this is where DEI strikes again, only this time it's capital gains tax. And there's one other one worth poking around with, and that is Janet Yellen is apparently talking to G20, foreign governments, that will institute the wealth tax that you mentioned a few moments ago. This would be a 2% tax on wealthy people. I don't know what the income level is going to be, basically all across the world. But of course, the United States has the most wealth, so we would be hurt the most. And you're going to have everybody, like billionaires, millionaires, they're all going to have to report everything, their income, their assets, their housing, their stock market portfolio. Everything will have to be reported to some European Union commission, all right, so they can figure out who to go after. I mean, this stuff, you can't make this stuff up. It's absolutely insane. And, oh, yeah, one more. A minimum tax on American corporations, which is to say foreign governments, go back to the G20, in this case it's the European Union, they will set a minimum tax on all corporations, particularly technology companies, which means American companies. So we will be governed, Sean, by foreign governments, particularly in Europe, who will then tax American corporations here in America. We're going to lose ours. We've already lost sovereignty.
But wait a minute. But isn't it deeper than that?
Now we're going to lose sovereignty on taxes.
Don't they want to have a wealth tax, a world wealth tax that they want to put in place?
Yeah, that's that 2% tax I referred to. Yes, that would be a wealth tax. But they have to figure out who's got the money. So you're going to have reporting requirements for everybody. I mean, I don't know how they expect to be able to do this. Everybody that has some degree of wealth will have to report to some central European government. I suppose the Treasury will share, and they will then figure out, picking and choosing, who's going to get taxed. It'd be a 2% tax on all assets. Now, this will do enormous damage to the U.S. economy. And the rest of the Biden plan, which is a roughly $5 trillion tax hike. You know, you saw the numbers from CNN. Trump's popularity from his first term is now enormous. And they just did another poll on CNN. And people remember how much money they made, including middle-class people, who were the biggest winners. In fact, that's not true. Lower income people. It wasn't the rich. The rich had to pay lost their state and local tax deduction. It was actually the lowest quintile, the lowest 20% had the biggest gains, okay? Poverty went down. Inequality went down. Unemployment, record lows for blacks, for Hispanics, for young people, for women. All these groups, now the polls show how people yearn for Trump's successful economic policies to lower taxes and deregulate and drill, baby, drill.
If you tax corporations, they don't pay taxes. They just pass on that added tax to their consumer. If they tax capital gains, well, that means people that have money won't invest money, and that will mean fewer jobs that are created. And we're talking about high-paying career jobs for many Americans.
100%. Look, the biggest hit from a corporate tax hike, and this is data shows this, Kevin Hassett did work on this years ago, wage earners, middle income, blue-collar type wage earners, Sean, they're the ones who benefit from a lower corporate tax. They're the ones, for example, in 1 year, under Trump, in 1 year, 2019, when the thing was fully in place, middle-income working folks made over $5,000. That was a bigger gain than 8 years of Obama and Joe Biden. So you're right. There's no corporate tax. It's passed along to wage earners who will lose money under Biden's proposal, and consumers and investors. It's a shell game. He is telling untruths just like he always does.
When I was a resident in New York and the Trump tax cuts passed and he eliminated the state and local tax deduction, I ended up paying more. But I didn't deserve that because you're rewarding states that elect, high tax and spend liberals. All right. Thanks, Larry.